It's time for the Severe MMA preview show with Sean Sheehan, Spencer Kite, Harry Powell, and your host, Ian O'Neill.
That is right. It's me, Ian O'Neill, and welcome to the UFC 277 preview show brought to you by SevereMMA.com and also brought to you by All Real Nutrition Bars. My voice almost breaks as I see Harry in our wonderful Severe MMA t-shirt. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But first, head on over to eatallreal.com. Get your code word, Severe MMA. And absolutely 10 out of 10 for the effort to Spencer this week as well, who's still waiting for that shipment of bars over to Abbotsford.
I'll tell you,
Shani, come on.
I went down to Tesco, whatever day it was, and I was talking to you, Spencer. Like, I'm going to buy you some Eat All Real. And they're fucking sold out. Every other protein bar in there, all of them full, and Eat All Real sold out. I would send you these, but I'm pretty sure they're gone off because I've been using them for like the purposes of this. But that's how good All Real Nutrition is.
That's the SevereMMA effect, lads.
Sold out.
Nothing wrong with a homemade sign either.
It's beautiful. Beautiful. Is Ian just like, has Ian died there, or is he still here? I feel like Ian died. I think Ian died. Oh, he's coming back. Anyway, eatallreal.com. Eatallreal.com. Use the promo code SevereMMA. Get 15% off. Over at eatallreal.com, and Ian is back. Take it away, Ian.
Well, lads, thanks for that. I don't know what happened there, but we're back in action. Not the best of starts, but yeah, UFC 277. We were just talking a little bit before we went live about this card being slightly under the radar. And, you know, I said that at the start of the week on Twitter. I just wanted to confirm those thoughts with you guys before we started here about this card, because at the top of the card we have a real kind of a monumental main event, and it's a main event that's going to structure, in my opinion, the future of women's mixed martial arts for the next little while, because we're dealing with a situation here where, is this truly the end of the Amanda Nunes era? Is it the beginning of the Julianna Peña era? There's lots of questions. There's lots of queries. Did Amanda Nunes have an off night on the first night when she fought Julianna Peña? She said she did. She said she spoke with Spencer during the week, and we're going to go to Spencer first just to kind of talk about that. The injuries to her knee, the changes to her camp, this, that, the other. You know, there was a lot of things going on for her. There's no excuses coming into this rematch. She says she's ready. She says she's going to go in there and get the finish. Julianna Peña is as confident as anyone I've ever seen going into fight, let alone going into fight one of the greatest women's mixed martial artists of all time. Why this fight is going under the radar is beyond me, because this is a fascinating matchup. And I can guarantee you one thing, it'll be a little less under the radar once we're finished with this preview tonight. Spencer, talk to me about what you have learned. I know you've spoken to Amanda ahead of this fight. She was telling you there was a bunch of stuff going on ahead of the first fight with Julianna Peña.
Yeah, so I mean, there was a little bit of it that came out, right, going into the fight and sort of after the fight, where she initially, like in the cage, said, you know, got to think if this is the end of things. So she had COVID. The fight was originally supposed to take place last August, and she had COVID. It got pushed back. When she got back into the gym, she was still dealing with a little bit of the sort of just lingering effects, right? Like her lungs weren't there. Her conditioning wasn't quite there. She also then has a little bit of a knee injury. You start being one side and wanting to manage one side. You end up screwing up the other one. There was some stuff going on at the gym that she wasn't very happy about. It was kind of stealing a little bit of her focus. And so it was by no means a camp that you want to have when you're going into a championship fight. She said on the Countdown show as well, like, she should have really decided to just tell the UFC, look, I can't fight. If you want to do an interim title, fine, but I can't compete on this day. But she didn't want to do that. They had already pushed the fight in August. She remembers the shit that she got for canceling the Valentina Shevchenko fight, International Fight Week, a few years earlier. She wanted to go out there, thought she would be able to go and do it, and just made just had a bad night. Like, made that choice to go and compete, and it was the wrong choice. And Julianna Peña had a great performance, followed through on everything that she said she was going to do. Amanda subsequently left ATT, set up her own shop. Quite happy with where she's at. Every fighter is going to tell you when you get them on the phone, 3-4 days before the fight, that everything's gone great. If it hadn't, I wouldn't have expected her to be like, nah, between you and me, it's been absolutely terrible. But I do believe that there was a lot going on last time. And truthfully, like, we see it sometimes, right? We talked about it going into the Valentina Shevchenko fight with Tayla Santos, of at a certain point, everybody kind of slips a little, right? And it becomes hard to get up for that. So here's Amanda Nunes, who has beaten every single woman that has worn the bantamweight and featherweight titles. She's beaten a bunch of legends. She is one of the greatest fighters in the history of this sport, full stop. And you're telling her, go out and you got to get geared up for this girl that you think, fair or not, isn't as good as some of the people you've already beaten. And then you've got all this other stuff going on. Peña made her pay for that. Peña made her pay for under appreciating her and underestimating her in dealing with the things that she was dealing with. And I think that loss really kind of gets under the skin of Amanda Nunes, who now wants to go out and prove that, like, any talk of my demise is a little premature, and any questions about whether I'm still the best female fighter on the planet, we're going to answer those on Saturday.
We most certainly are, and I cannot wait to see what happens. Like, Shawnee, at the time, we were all up in arms when this fight happened, and when Julianna Peña eventually got the finish in round 2. We were talking about it being possibly one of the greatest upsets of all time in mixed martial arts history. Now that the dust has settled and we're a couple of days away, would that still be your assessment? And how do you feel that everything is aligning up ahead of this fight? And why would you think it's somewhat fallen under the radar as well? Lots of questions there.
There are. First one, anyone that tells you this wasn't the greatest upset in the history of the UFC, anywhere top level mixed martial arts, I would say, is one of those people who go, it can't be because it just happened, right? GSP and Sarah was the one everyone pointed at. GSP wasn't GSP then. I think he'd one title defense, or his first defense or whatever. If it had happened 5 years down the line or whatever, absolutely. Amanda Nunes, when she got beaten by Julianna Peña, had knocked out Cyborg and Ronda Rousey in 99 seconds. She was the GOAT. She was the reigning champion. She beat Valentina Shevchenko twice. Imagine, look at Valentina Shevchenko that we have now. This was the greatest of all time, and she was beaten by a person who we were talking, did she even deserve the title shot? No, she wasn't. Julianna Peña wasn't at kind of Matt Serra's level, I suppose, but GSP wasn't at the level of Amanda Nunes in terms of her standing in the sport as an all-timer at the points of the two fights, right? I can't really even think of anything else, if I'm being honest. John Jones has never been beaten. Habib, at the time when he was champion and when he was the greatest, Habib. McGregor against Diaz is a different story. He came back, and it's different. So there's that. To me, objectively looking at it, I was able to objectively look at it at the time. I can't think of really a close second. There's been some great upsets and things, but at the very top high level, that was the one. Coming into this fight, I'm not sure why it's under the radar, to be honest. Look, I have spoken on many podcasts over the last while that and said that MMA has had a pandemic bounce, that during the pandemic there were people sitting at home, they had nothing else to watch, and they watched MMA. And we saw Tony Ferguson and Justin Gaethje drawing huge numbers. We've seen Israel Adesanya become a star when I actually don't think he is as big a star as people make out, to be honest. And we will see that. I suppose I'll be proven right or wrong. Now, have the fans kind of stopped watching a little bit? I didn't hear the numbers from the last pay-per-view, which would suggest the last pay-per-view probably didn't do massive numbers, if you want to put it that way. Now, maybe someone else heard, and if you can, feel free to interrupt me and tell me. And it could be the same one for this, whereas, we're getting towards, the summer now. People are out, people are doing stuff at the weekends. It's the last few weeks of the summer. I'm sure they're getting the Premier League coming back next week. I'm sure, the LFL will be back in a couple of months' time or whatever. I'm sure, the rest of the American sports and all. this time of the year, I don't know if it's the best time of the year for staying in on a Saturday night if you're in America and all of that. So there is that. So the third question I will answer, everything Spencer said there, right? I think it's true, right? I think it's true. And, you know, not what he said, but what Amanda said to him, what Amanda has been saying, you know, what Spencer said is absolutely true.
Calling me a liar.
You lying Canadian bastard, yeah. But what's she supposed to say? Like, you know, she if she says it and it's the truth, perfect. But if it's not the truth, she's still going to fucking say that anyway. So we don't really know. Like, there are a few worrying factors, and Spencer mentioned it just before we started here. And one I think was a big factor in the first fight, and I've forgotten about it, was the COVID. Like, anyone who had the COVID from a fucking year ago, as I had, will know it fucks you up for like 6 weeks. Like, it really did fuck you up for a long time. And she had it not too long before that. She pulled out of the fight and the fight was made again. I can absolutely see that as an excuse coming into that. I feel like I have it again now. I'm coughing throughout this whole thing. But she, look, she went into the fight. She didn't look as maybe prepared. The Kell Harrison there in that fight, wasn't she sitting caged? So there was all talk that Kell Harrison was in her gym. Now she's left that gym. Spencer was saying that she's training by herself now. That may be going forward. I don't think that's the best thing in the world. So look, she's lots of excuses in the last fight. My thing coming to this one, does she have those same things in this one, right? Okay, the gym situation has been changed, but has it been sorted? The COVID situation, okay, that's a different one. The fighting Julianna Peña when she's a massive underdog, when you're looking past her, that situation is probably gone. But how much does it take? And like, what were the real reasons? Usually when people are at the very top and are performing at the very top, they find reasons to get past the reasons. You know, they will overcome no matter what. Anyone who's had an in with a camp or seen anything with a camp, we've all heard of, you know, people breaking toes or breaking hands or whatever and coming through stuff. And we've heard fighters talk about it. And people overcome, especially if you're as good as Amanda Nunes fighting someone who is not as good as you in Julianna Peña. And she wasn't able to do that the first time. Will she be able to do it the second time? Or will that be a factor? Will that even be a thing? Or will she be at 100% and just go in and blow her out the water? Maybe you can come back to me for my take on that. But those questions for me are unanswered. And I went back and I looked at my videos from the halfway point or the turn of the year. And I said, this was the fight I was looking forward to this year. This is the fight. Because this fight answers more questions than any other fight. We saw what happened in the first fight. We saw what Amanda Nunes was before that. Let's see what she is now. And that is unbelievably exciting to wait for and to see. Like, we're going to see it. There will be questions answered unless there's another fucking injury. Can't be 3 weeks in a row. Can't be, don't blame me. It's my fault now.
You're fully getting blamed now if someone fucking pulls
just
up
take it
injured.
away. Just someone else talk now. Go on.
Well, I mean, just to put into context about the upset, okay? We were talking about a Julianna Peña who had just 2 fights previously tapped out in the 3rd round to a guillotine choke to Germaine de Randamie, who's primarily known as a striker. And that fight was labeled a striker versus grappler, and you got beaten at your own game by a striker. She came back and responded well with her own rear naked choke in round 3 against Sarah McMahon, right back on the horse. I mean, Sarah McMahon is more so not that great a fighter, or wouldn't be known to be that great of a fighter.
It seems she and Sarah McMahon you're talking about.
Well, you can come in on her defense again, maybe some other time, but for now, she's not that good. And relatively speaking, like, that's a fighter that Julianna Peña, to be more respectful about, should be beating, you know. So it do give credit to Julianna Peña to come back from that bitter disappointment from the Randamie. Shows that she's really good mental strength. And it seemed like she was the only one who truly could believe that she would get the job done going to that first fight with Amanda Nunes. Now the question does remain, was it an off fight? Was it an injury? Because the facts of the matter was Julianna Peña made Amanda Nunes quit in the first fight. She made her quit. And that will give her a bunch of confidence coming into this rematch. And I'm going to go to you, Harry, to kind of get into the ins and outs of what went wrong for Amanda Nunes in the first fight and what she needs to do to fucking win the rematch.
So what she needs to do to win the rematch is really, really easy. It's just be Amanda Nunes. Like, that's literally how she wins. the next fight, right? In the first fight, just everything seemed off. Amanda Nunes fights at essentially in the pocket, right? Go watch the Cyborg fight. Go watch the Rousey fight. One of the things that intrigued me the most about, and again, I'm not a huge stats man, but I think stats are a great derivative if you can align them with actual insights from the fight, right? They tell a quarter of the story, right? Amanda Nunes has a 55% striking accuracy and a 51% striking defense, right? That to me tells me something. That tells me she's somebody that relies and is comfortable in her power. She doesn't mind taking a shot because she knows she's going to land. And when she lands, by fuck, you're not going to want to throw another one, right? Because you're going to be racing over that way and I'm going to be following you. In this fight, in the first one, she wasn't anywhere, right? She got caught. It's not often you see fighters get caught in no man's land. What do I mean by no man's land? It means that middle bit between the pocket and outside range. Julianna Peña caught her there a number of times. And it was strange to see somebody of Amanda Nunes' caliber getting caught in such rudimentary, striking, fundamentally unsound positions. It was very, very strange. It was very strange to see Amanda Nunes forcing shots, not landing and throwing shots. Like if you go back and watch the Cyborg fight, she set Cyborg up for some absolutely beautiful strikes before it all gets a bit mad. The Rousey fight, I mean, whatever. Rousey shouldn't have been in there in any way, shape, or form. Not fit for that fight whatsoever.
Head movement.
But the fight, she didn't look like, what was that?
Head movement.
Head movement.
She didn't set anything up. She looked like she was forcing everything. Everything felt a little bit labored. The timing was off. Shawnee mentioned the timing at the time. I went back and had a look at his tweets. I know that's sad, but whatever. We do these things. And when she got the takedown, that was fine. But we didn't then see her progress at all. Julianna Peña made horrendous mistakes grabbing that Kimura. I know Shawnee's going to say Kimuras are coming back in MMA, but Kimuras from bottom half guard, when Amanda Nunes was in the position that she was in, is not a position you want to use Kimuras in. And holding the Kimura when somebody has your back is the dumbest thing in the fucking world. You are never going to see a straight arm lock from the back. You're just not going to see it, right? Lads will happily smash you in the jaw before they're going to let that arm break, right? And then in the second round, Peña just ups that confidence level. She lands those shots. She does something... and I'm doing verbatim of One Man Booth here. So if you don't want to listen to that, just listen to this. You'll be grand. But like Peña does something that I learned early on in kickboxing. It's called jamming, right? So when you see a fighter about to throw a shot, if you are able to get into that pocket of space and hold some form of stiff arm or a leg or something to the arm that's coming, you stifle the shot without having to block it, without having to counter it. And Peña did this so well with just the straight arm jab. She used it like a jousting stick. Now, don't get me wrong, it was a mangled, bent, odd-looking, awkward jousting stick, but she used it to good effect, right? And as the fight progressed, you saw Amanda Nunes regress back to some of the things that we've seen previously, right? Start really fast, fade really fast. And when it came to it, that choke was nowhere near on. Let me tell you, it was nowhere near on. It was across the jaw at best, and we get a tap.
The avalanche had started though, hadn't it? Like in that fight, and in all fights we see it, when the avalanche starts, you can't stop that fucking avalanche.
Absolutely. And this is the big question I have. We may see Amanda Nunes go out there and just absolutely fucking steamroller in 15 seconds. We might see it. But if she doesn't, and if Peña survives that first 5 minutes again, and if Peña drags it into the second and Amanda Nunes looks at her, and there's a moment that she looks at her, Julianna Peña, let me do one more analysis thing, and I'll give it over to you, I promise. The one beautiful thing that Peña was doing was conventionally you start shots with your lead hand. You start combinations with your lead hand. Julianna Peña was starting shots with her right hand, her backhand, setting Amanda Nunes up for an illusion of space. She throws the right hand and Peña thinks, oh, you're not where you think you are. I'm going to come in and I'm going to counter you. And then she lands the left hook. Then she lands the right hand because Amanda's all the way in. And then she lands the left hook again. And she landed that combination multiple times. And there's one moment when she lands it. And I watched it in 0.25 speed just to make sure I watched what I thought I watched. and there's a 1,000-yard stare from Amanda as she gets hit with it, like, oh, fuck, this lady's not going anywhere, and this lady's not scared of my power. What do I do now? That's a question I want to see answered.
She's going to have to answer that on Saturday night, because Julianna Peña is coming again. And that was Harry motherfucking Powell with some great breakdown analysis there. And definitely go and check out One Man Boot to hear a lot more of what that man has to offer there, because it's just excellent analysis. And those are the big questions coming into this fight. How well has Amanda Nunes conditioned herself to deal with the consequences if she cannot get Julianna Peña out of there? Because this is kind of going to be, in my opinion, a tale of two fights within one fight, and it's going to be the tale of the first 10 minutes and what happens after that, even if it gets there. I really can't see a way that she falters again in the second round this time around. I just think that there was shit that was off on her game, or maybe it was the injury, maybe it was her lack of conditioning, but she really fell hard in that second round. Like, I mean, even at the start of the first round, she landed well. She put Julianna Peña down on her ass. She hurt her at times, but it was that belief and that self-confidence, and it kind of shifted even more so from Nunes. And what confidence that Nunes lost in that first fight is the confidence that Julianna Peña gained. And it's going to be that mental battle going into this one again. And it's the first 10 minutes of this fight is going to be absolutely crucial, I feel. Sean, give me your kind of landscape of how you think the fight is going to go.
That's key to this fight. I really think it's meant, like, usually I pop in here after listening to Harry's and technical analysis, and I maybe give you a bit of technical analysis to come in before him and stuff. I'm not really interested in my technical analysis of this. I listen to Harry's technical analysis. I want to watch this fight and just see how it goes. Like I said about that avalanche earlier on, right? And what I mean by that is, right, the fight, Amanda Nunes was in the fight. Next thing, it was downhill. And you only get tapped by half a choke if you're caught at the bottom of an avalanche. Like, you can hold your breath for, 2 minutes maybe, I don't know. If you're underwater being pulled down, you're not holding your breath for 2 minutes. You're holding it for maybe 45 seconds and you'll pass out or something like that. That's what was happening with Amanda Nunes there. She doesn't matter that she's a black belt. Doesn't matter that she was trained. It was panic mode. It was death mode. She was gone. And if she gets to 0.01 of a second into that avalanche, she's gone again. And she needs to stop that from happening. And that's all it is. The technical analysis, if she goes out there and punches her in the face fucking once, it'll be all over and that avalanche will never start. But her key in this fight is to not let that begin, because that's the only way. I fully believe the only way Julianna Peña beats Amanda Nunes is if she sticks in there long enough for Amanda Nunes to mentally beat herself. Right? And she has to. We spoke about it, and it's after coming back to me now. We spoke about it afterwards and said that's exactly what Julianna Peña did the first time. She stuck in there, said, fuck's sake, she's not going away. And Julianna Peña believed that she was not going away. And then who went away? Amanda Nunes went away. And that was the key to that fight. And that is the key again to this fight, in a very roundabout sort of way, because it wasn't the key coming into the first fight. By God damn it, it is this time. And I can't wait. I just want to see that point, right? It'll either be a knockout for Amanda Nunes. We'll never see that point. Great. That satisfaction for the moment has been done. But if we do see that point, we will all see it. It'll be like fucking Ralph Wiggum on The Simpsons when Lisa breaks his heart, and you can see it. They paused it, and you can see the moment. That was the moment, slow motion, where he broke his heart, like Harry was talking about there. You could see the moment that happened. We will see that again if it happens again on Saturday night. And to me, I can't wait for that. Now, I'm not saying I want Amanda Nunes to lose or anything. I'm picking her. I think she'd knock her out in the first round. But God Almighty, that to me is why this is the most anticipated fight for me this year.
Yeah. The piece of that that's really interesting to me too is, like, here we are again. It's all about Amanda Nunes. So if you don't think Julianna Peña is hearing all of this talk about, oh, Amanda had this going on and all of these different things and it's excuses and reasons, and we're going to have to see what Amanda can change, and she's just sitting there going, I beat this bitch once. I'm going to do it again. Like, she walked around through the Ultimate Fighter full of confidence. They faced off at the end of that thing, and Amanda starts chirping a little bit, and Julianna just says, okay, just show up, okay? Just show up. And Amanda's like, yeah, I'll be there. And she was like, yeah, you said that last time. And look what happened. She like that self-belief that she has ain't going anywhere. And we can joke about it and we can poke fun of it of like, oh, you think you're the best grappler in the division. Jermaine Durandamy choked you out, as Ian said. She walked in there and took everything Amanda had and just said, nope, it's my night. This is my moment. And you sure as shit better believe, like we talked about with Lauren Murphy a couple weeks back. If you think Lauren Murphy was going to roll over for Miesha Tate so Miesha Tate could have her moment, didn't happen. Julianna Peña ain't here to allow Amanda Nunes to have her return to glory. She will be in her face from the jump, and she ain't going anywhere. You're going to have to get rid of her.
Do you know what I think is funny too? Belief to me is like, this might sound idiotic, but belief to me is a bit of a stupid thing, right? I think you have to be a little bit stupid to believe in yourself as much as MMA fighters believe in themselves, and especially Julianna Peña when you're fighting Amanda Nunes. I know Ian, you probably remember the Unbelievables. They had a thing. This lad Maloney, you ask Maloney to dig a hole, he'll keep going till he hits Australia, and he'll turn around and fill it in for you because he's stupid enough to do it. You know, I feel like that's Julianna Peña, and that's the most roundabout shitty compliment I've ever given a person, but it is a compliment. Like, she will not give up and she will stick in there. It's just, is Amanda Nunes able to get her out there or not? Very intriguing.
Thick ignorance and brute force is kind of they compliment.
You wouldn't kill Kenny and many all Ireland.
Yeah, that is the truth. That is the truth. And you know what? All of those questions are going to be answered on Saturday night. And I have to agree with you, Sean. I am super excited for this fight. Like, I mean, anyone who's not is probably not human, to be honest, or just simply doesn't know what they're looking at. And I would suggest if you're half thinking about watching this fight, go ahead and watch it, because we're going to see either a monumental moment in Amanda Nunes' career where she can get over those mental hurdles, because you know what, what she has to achieve is not too easy. All those mental battles that will be going in her head. She had been dominating women for years and years, and then the shoe turned and she was the one who was dominated in the last fight. And that's a difficult aspect to come over as a fighter. And it'll be interesting to see what her mental fortitude is coming into this fight. I can't wait. That's your main event. Your co-main event is another interim title fight in the flyweight division. Look, at interim, it was added for show. The fighters will get paid more money, hopefully, and we get a little bit more excitement because there's a big shiny belt on the line. Davison Figueiredo is waiting in the lurches. He can't fight, but Kai Kara-France comes in and he takes on Brandon Moreno, and it's a great fight. It's a brilliant stylistic matchup. I mean, you're talking about Kai Kara-France, who has seemed to have just found his groove over the last couple of years. And we're talking about confidence and we're talking about passing tests. That's exactly what he's done in his last 3 wins. Coming in there, back against the wall against Rodrigo Bontorin, looked like he was going to be defeated, pulls the knockout win off with 5 seconds to go in round 1. Goes in there against former champion Cody Garbrandt, who was moved down to the 125-pound division. The fight was set up to kind of give Cody Garbrandt a push in the direction of the title shot, because that's what the UFC wanted. And if they told you anything else, they're telling you lies. They wanted to push Cody Garbrandt for the shot. Kai Kara-France came in and said, not happening today, son. Clipped him, put him out there in round 1. Comes in against Askar Askarov, a guy who was undefeated, a guy who had never been truly... I know he went in there and had a draw and had been tested in some ways, but not really truly tested. And me, myself, I honestly I gave Kai Kara-France very little chance going into that fight. But you know what? He proved me wrong, and he won that fight relatively comfortably, to be honest. And he proved a lot of doubters wrong. So we would be foolish to be thinking along the same lines with him coming in here against Brandon Moreno. Yes, they fought before back in 2019. Yes, Brandon Moreno won. And yes, Brandon Moreno is coming back off arguably one of the best and most competitive trilogies of all time, in my opinion, in Davison Figueiredo. It was an absolute pleasure going back and watching those 3 fights. So what can he bring to the table in this co-main event? He has a lot of points to prove as well. The interim title is just a place setter for him. He is looking at Davison Figueiredo. He wanted that 4th fight. He missed his opportunity in front of his quote unquote home crowd when they fought. And I just think this is a fascinating fight, guys. Sean, How do you see it going down between these two? Does this fight excite you? Look, you've been a proponent of the flyweight division for many years, and we're all proponent of the flyweight division. The fly never die hashtag was flying a long time on your Twitter handle, and I think this fight is going to deliver as well.
Yeah, like I think it's going to be 5 rounds of chaos, honestly, as most flyweight fights are, title fights anyway are. I think it's a very interesting fight as well, and it's funny. I'm not a big guy in the whole mentality thing of it. I think preparation leads mentality a lot of the time, but I think this one, it's funny. It's 2 fights here. I think both of them could come down to mentality, and maybe you wouldn't say that with Brandon Moreno. And maybe I'm having the wrong call here, but I just feel like you fought Davidson Figueiredo 3 times in a row, and coming into that fight, maybe even though Davidson hadn't, loads of wins or anything and loads of title defenses, he was viewed as kind of the next Demetrius, maybe, or the next best guy. Okay, he'd struggle with weight and things like that, so maybe there was some drawbacks, but he was seen as the next best. And then, you had the draw, you had the win, and then you had the loss. And it's 1-1-1. And it just feels like that fight had to happen next. I know some people, you get carried away in the politics and you're saying it doesn't make sense. But it does. It's your 1-1-1. You have to find a winner. That's a draw. That is a draw straight down the middle. You have to find a winner. And let's not forget, the guy with the belt right now is Figueiredo. This is an interim title. So it depends how Brandon Moreno actually looks at this. If he's looking at it, head down, this is a title shot, I'm fighting for a title, absolutely no problem. And it gives him 100% motivation. But if he's looking at this as like, well, I'm not fighting for the belt, I'm not fighting against the champion here to win the title back that I had, or else he's saying, I need to win this fight to fight for the title. Well, we saw what happens when you overlook someone, especially someone as good as Kai Kara-France, someone who hits as hard as Kai Kara-France, someone as dangerous as Kai Kara-France. I don't think that's a good thing. So I think a lot of this fight comes down to the mentality of Brandon Moreno. Now, that's the question I have. If it's to answer my own question, I think it's going to struggle for him early, but I think he'll come through it. And I don't think a lot of guys would. I think he will lose the first round, maybe the second round, and win 3, 4, and 5. I think that's the way it'll go. I went back just as before we were starting here watching their first fight, and that's kind of the way that fight went. He was losing early and came back, won late. It was only 3 rounds that time. Obviously, as I'm sure Harry will point out, Kai Kara-France has become a much better fighter. Then cardio, he'll need to have a lot better cardio here, especially if he does go hard early and tries to prey on Moreno. But that's the main thing for me. I'm sure Harry and Spencer will get into the technical parts of it a little bit more, but I think the mentality, I'm not questioning Brandon Moreno's mentality. I'm just, questioning the human mentality of someone being put in that position where it's Figueiredo. It's a draw, and now not Figueiredo anymore. I think that's a very, very tough position to be put in. And for Kara-France then on the other side, just before I throw it over, he's in a position where, Jesus Christ, I've got an interim title shot. This is the biggest fight of my life. This is amazing. This is not the biggest fight of Brandon Moreno's life. It's probably the 4th biggest fight of his life, So that's a big difference there.
Yeah, sure. It's like talking about mentality, Spencer, and Sean mentioned it, and this is a very good point. The mentality I'm looking at Kai Kara-France coming in this fight is its championship mentality, because you know what? He's from City Kickboxing Gym, and they've got Israel Adesanya there, and they've got Alexander Volkanovski there as well. And they've instilled that championship mentality into that gym. And it really seems to have brushed off on Kai Kara-France. We've seen that his level of confidence. We've seen him make some adjustments to his game, and Harry will get into those adjustments in a little bit. But just, having that championship mentality in a gym and training and working with champions, it really pays off, and it's really good to be around for a fighter, isn't it?
It is. I mean, everybody in the sport does the iron sharpens iron. I tend to look at it more of a rising tide lifts all ships. And so for a guy like Kai Kara-France, who has been ranked in the top 15 since he came into the UFC, always possessed that sort of worrisome power if you're on the other side of it, right? A guy at 25 that has a difference maker, but had some fights where he wasn't able to put it together. And you look at the things that have changed in the last 18 months, that Bontarine fight still stands out to me as a major shift, as a moment where that confidence just grows, right? And we've seen Israel talk about it of, we've always believed in him. Now he believes in himself. And there's just something to be said for when that switch finally goes with a fighter. And it doesn't happen for everybody, right? We talk about it on this show a lot, of fighters just getting to a point where they know who they are and that they're comfortable no matter what. And that even when things go sideways, I can get through it. He spent 4.5 minutes with a very legitimate Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt backpacked on him. And he fought hands and he did all the things that he had to do and he tried scraping him off the fence. And the minute he got free and he had an opportunity, he said, let me show you what I can do. And done. And Cody Garbrandt went in there and said, I'm faster than you. I hit harder than you. I can beat you at this spot where you're supposed to be good. And he went, try me. And then the Askar Askarov fight, man, if you don't come away from that fight earlier this year, just flush with confidence, right? As you said, undefeated guy, had the draw with Brandon Moreno, but fine. No losses. Nobody's beaten him. Should have a wrestling advantage. Still has pretty good boxing of his own. Kai shut down all the takedowns. When he did get his back taken a little bit, he did all the right things again. It's just that confidence of being in that room, of trusting in yourself, in seeing everything that you guys have worked on for years paying off. You see it. There's no way to question it anymore. You see Dan Hooker rise through the ranks. You see Israel rise through the ranks. You see Volkov come over and benefit from being over there. Even some of the other guys, Brad Riddell having a good run of things. And then Kai starts getting all of those moments himself, where he's coming through the bad parts. And the spots where maybe in the past, right? Like you look at some of those losses, Brandon Royval. It's a good fight, and then he gets caught, and he just can't make the right decisions, and he gets choked out. He's making the right decisions now because he understands, okay, I'm still going to have my opportunity. If I can get through this, I still have chances. I still have ways to win this. To go out and win that fight against Askar Askarov the way he did, without it being a knockout, without it being just this dynamic, that's a huge confidence boost. And if you don't think he's going into this ready to bring more gold back to that gym, you're crazy.
You certainly are crazy. And I just think me and you spoke about this fight, Harry, a little bit earlier on this week as well. Obviously both guys fought in 2019. We're going to see, two pretty different fighters. I mean, I think the skill levels of Kai Kara-France have probably risen a lot further than what Brandon Moreno has. But what Brandon Moreno has experienced since that fight is, that he has competed with the best guys in the division and he has become the champion. And being in there with a guy like Davison Figueiredo and being competitive against a guy like Davison Figueiredo can only bring you confidence as well. Looking back at that fight in 2019, which Brandon Moreno won by decision, what was the main aspects of that fight that got him the win? And should we expect to see some similarities in the rematch?
So I feel like the things that won Brandon Moreno that fight in 2019, a lot of it was mentality and will. And Sean and Spencer have touched on some brilliant points. I think some really archetypal points to this fight. And are we going to see...
I gave you a 4-minute entry into this fight and I get nothing. Come on.
These, look, the question I have for this fight, right? The question I have for the next fight, I think looking back at the 2019 fight is fine, but I think because of the differences we've seen in these fighters, specifically Kai Kara-France, looking back at it's a little bit of a logical fallacy, right? Like the question I have for this one specifically is this is the first Kai Kara-France 5-round fight since 2015. Now, we know all of the technical differences in Kai Kara-France's game. We saw the takedown stuffing against Askar Askarov. We saw his ability to stop the choke and fight the back and fight the hands and misalign the spine and misalign the head against Askar Askarov, against Rogerio Bontorin. The thing that you talked about him possessing this gift of power, the difference in him landing it is now he sits down on his shots. Now he's not so fearful of being in a transition of fighting. He's comfortable in the transitions of fighting. And I think that is the main takeaway I find from Kai Kara France's technical ability switch up. It's not that he's necessarily thrown a jab better than he did before. It's not that, he's found a way to do this and do that. He's just become comfortable in who he is as a fighter. And he's become comfortable in all of the transitions of fighting.
I think sorry, just to interrupt. Sorry, I really apologize for interrupting. I think that that confidence kind of does come maybe from his confidence of not panicking when he gets taken down as well, which can take so much away from your striking game as well. If you're like, oh shit, I can't get taken down because I don't know how to get back up. But I think he's proved to himself and to everybody else in that Askarov fight that that's not really too much of an issue anymore.
Right.
34 fights. 34 fights Kai Kara Francis had. Askarov 14 coming into that one, I believe.
Right.
Experience plays a big part in stuff like that. Someone who's been met with that before and someone who hasn't been met with that before. I said, I think myself and Harry did a podcast earlier on in the week, that reference point you have in the past in your career, that's massive to have. And when you have 34 fights, you're going to have that for lots of different areas. Maybe the 5-round thing is the issue, as Harry said there, but that's big, I think, coming into this as well, having that amount of experience, because challengers usually don't have that.
100%. And I think that this to me is the question. Brandon Moreno has the recent reference points of 5-round fights, of preparing for 5-round fights, of doing the 5-round spars. And he's been doing them for 2 to 3 years, 3 years, 4 years at this point, right? For all of the 5-round fights he's been getting available for. Kai Kara France, and you talk to fighters and they'll tell you they're not going to do the 5-round camps for a 3-round fight because of the wear and tear on your body. So Kai Kara France hasn't seen a 5-round camp for 7 years. What sort of wear and tear have we got on his body coming into this? How's that going to play out when Brandon Moreno doesn't go anywhere? And Brandon Moreno's chin's still out there and his chest is still high and his fucking hands are still up here, ready to down block and ready to do whatever he's doing. I was going to make a slight analogy, but it seems a bit far-fetched now.
He looks like he's doing the Macarena whenever he's standing in front of someone.
Or he's got spades for hands to dig himself out of the fucking avalanche that he puts himself into. 0.5 seconds.
That was a much better analogy.
Love it. All coming back around. All coming back.
The thing I find with Kai Kara France is the other side of this, him being comfortable to be the nail. You mentioned it there. When he gets taken down, it's not like, fuck, the fight's over now. I might as well just let whatever's happening happen because I'm not getting back up, am I? I think the cage wrestling, the defensive cage wrestling coming out of City Kickboxing, the influence of Alexander Volkanovski's defensive wrestling has changed that gym gargantuanly. You go and look at Izzy's defensive wrestling on the cage. And okay, we saw some stuff against Jan Blachowicz, these things happen. But actually go and watch what he's doing there. That stuff is getting passed down to Dan Hooker. That stuff is getting passed down to Kai Kara France. And I think the point that I can't remember who made it, one of you made it, is when you're in a gym and you look at the guys that you were with when they didn't have any money and they were struggling for food just like you were, and now they turn up to train in a McLaren that's orange and they've named it after an anime character. And they've got the coat and they've got the nice bag and you're like, oh fuck me, lads, I can do this as well, right?
Can I ask you one question, Harry? Sorry, you said there. Sorry if I interrupted in the middle of your thing. The wrestling nail, right? Being the wrestling nail, they're getting more used to it. Is what if someone like Kai Kara France becomes the striking nail, and he has like as I said earlier, first maybe go round and have 2 rounds, and then Moreno starts boxing him up. That can be an issue because, like, when you're a striker like that and you're expecting to be a better striker, when you no longer are, that can be a big issue, I think. And we saw that with McGregor. We've seen other people. And
there's no guarantees that Brandon Moreno won't go in there and be dominant in grappling exchanges in this fight as well. Just because Ashcroft wasn't able to make it happen, he was relatively small flyweight as well. Moreno's going to be coming in there as probably the bigger man, I think.
Right. So these are basically the 2 points I was getting at with. The first one is Moreno is going to be the more physical man. He's just the bigger, thicker, more different Askarov, right? Askarov is going to go in, he's going to push against the fades, and he's going to methodically try to get to your hips, get to your back body lock, do suplexes, run to the single leg style wrestling. That's what we're going to see. Brandon Moreno is just a mad cunt that's going to just dive on random shit and will scramble his way to dominant positions. And then when he gets the dominant positions, he's going to squash you. You see Brandon Moreno grapple in the middle of the cage. Defending grappling in the middle of a cage is completely different to cage wrestling, as we all know. I think the other thing is the thing that Shawnee mentioned. Brandon Moreno knows that he can get beat the fuck out for 2 rounds and come back and win the last 3. We've seen it. What does Kai Kara-France do when that 3rd round completely turns on its head and he knows he's got 3 more rounds to get through before that judge's scorecard comes out? What happens if Kai Kara-France is getting beaten, the cardio starts to go and he wants to grapple now? What happens then? Like, I feel like this is experience in fights over recent experience of rule set. It's will and heart versus newfound confidence, newfound skill set acquisition, newfound transitional fighting experiences. That's why I think this fight is crazy good.
Absolutely crazy good. I can't wait to see it. I know something that we were talking about as well, Harry, in the weekend. That's like the use of the leg kick as well that Kai Kara-France will be looking to try and throw against. You know, he has a kind of a heavy set stance and it does get heavy, Brandon Moreno, on his front foot at times. And I think, you know, if Kai Kara-France, I know Davison Figueiredo tried to get that off in their last fight as well. If Kai Kara-France can make that happen and kind of nullify the movement and can maybe put Moreno in a situation where he can't put any weight on that, well, that fucking messes up Moreno's striking game. It messes up his grappling game, and it's a real big nuance in this fight altogether. But it's one that I'm really, really looking forward to. And before we move on, does anybody have anything else to add about this fight?
One other wild card. This is Moreno's first fight with Glory MMA and Fitness in Lee Summit, Missouri. New head coach James Krause, right? Spent all his career with Interim Gym, Luis Arvizo. Left that team after the last loss, went out to Missouri, hooked up with Croucher and that crew. I don't know that it's necessarily, you know, I don't think we're going to see a brand new Brandon Moreno. Like, I don't think you're stripping it down to the studs and rebuilding him. But what does Krause bring to this? And what has changed in the 4 to 6 months that he's been there in terms of getting some different looks, learning a few new things, having a different voice in the corner that, you know, Krause is pretty good in those in-between of rounds of really recentering his guy and letting him know what they need to do. And he'll get up in you if you're not fighting the way you need to fight. And so that's going to be another interesting little piece that I want to see is what does that shift have to do with this fight?
Indeed.
If I could just come back on the leg kick thing, I think the application of the leg kick is going to be massive in the way that this fight swings too, because we've seen and can see. We're going to talk about Alex Perez in a second, right? Well, he stopped UCA Formiga with leg kicks, but UCA Formiga was also able to punish him when he threw naked leg kicks. So the question for me with Kai Kara-France is, what sort of thing are you going to be doing in those striking exchanges? Are you going to try and throw naked kicks and get the risk and have the risk of either having that kick caught or of having yourself countered? Or are you going to try and throw combinations at Brandon Moreno and leave yourself then available for the grappling or the countering? How are we going to set those up? Are we going to use the L-step footwork that City Kickboxing are famous for? Are we going to use the plodding outside footwork battle? How are we going to get there? That's one of the questions I have for that fight.
Yeah, it's a solid question, and it'll be answered as all questions normally get answered inside the octagon, the co-main event, Moreno versus Kai Kara-France. As we say goodbye to the co-main event, as we move on to the next fight on the card, we'll also say goodbye to Mr. Sean Sheen, who can't stick around for too much longer. We appreciate his time. And we look forward to seeing him again the next time he wants to come on and break down some fights with us.
Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it, and I am out.
There we go. Look at that. Professional. We didn't even need to move anybody around. That's as sweet as transition as this is going to be as we talk about the heavyweight fight between Derek Lewis and Sergey Pavlovich. That will serve as the third fight on the main card. Derek Lewis, you know, I struggle to kind of think up of a better terminology, because the kind of theme of this preview show so far, lads, has been mentality. And we've seen Derek Lewis come in there with a strong mentality, but we've also seen him come in there with a weak mentality as well. And he didn't look himself last time against Tai Tuivasa, who himself has been on a hell of a roll in the heavyweight division. Sergey Pavlovich has had his disappointment when he's won sole loss in the UFC so far, and he's won sole loss in his career against Alistair Overeem. But it's been off to the races. It's been a pretty routine win over Marcelo Gollum, pretty routine win over Maurice Green, a routine win over Shamil Abradugahimov. Oh, that's a mouthful. Sorry, guys. I nailed that before, but you know how it goes. He faces off what probably is his toughest challenge against Derek Lewis. And I'm wondering, could we be seeing a small turning of the tide? Derek Lewis coming in at 37, which isn't all that old for the heavyweight division, but we have a young, hungry buck at 30 years of age in Sergey Pavlovich. And it'll be interesting to see if the guard does change. Spencer, please give me your thoughts on this fight.
I mean, for me, you mentioned mindset and you mentioned sort of focus, right? With Derek, is at what point does all the jokes for all the years have always been that I don't like this, I'm just here for the money. Well, Derek's got money. If you follow Derek's Instagram or his Twitter, you see him speeding out of his driveway in a different car every day. Derek has the money.
He okay.
He okay. He's done the damn things. And so he's hit a point now. You mentioned the Tai Tuivasa loss. He had the loss to Cyril Gane last year as well. He's sort of now officially, to me, out of the title picture and back into the role of the guy you got to beat to get into the VIP booth or the VIP room in the heavyweight division. And I just don't know how long that a guy like that wants to stick around doing that. Now, he is forever, as long as he steps in that cage, going to carry fight-ending power from minute 1 to minute end, whatever it may be. As we saw with Volkov, right? Just takes one, getting the hell kicked out of you for 14 minutes and 45 seconds, and then one. But I just wonder, how much longer does he want to go out there being in this position where it's the next tough kid that's trying to make a name, that can throw hammers, that you don't want to keep getting knocked out, that you don't want to keep putting your body through the misery of training camp. And for Derek, it is misery. Where's he at? Because Pavlovich is 30 years old, got back in the win, not back in the win column, but back in the cage from a 2-year layoff in London earlier this year, runs through Abdurakhimov, 3 straight wins. The Overeem fight to me is one of those ones that you just kind of toss away. He hadn't fought in a year. They fly him out to Beijing, China, and throw him in there with Alistair Overeem. Like deep end of the pool. It's too much too soon for a 26-year-old at the time. He's in that prime of his career now. Does he go out, smash through Derek Lewis, and sort of join that next tier of fighter? And does Derek have what it takes still mentally to go out there and be willing to go through that against somebody again?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, like, Pavlovich is a guy who has some big power. We've seen that already, but he also has a good takedown and some good ground and pound as well. And I think that that's probably going to be the key to this fight, because if he takes Derek Lewis down early in this fight, I am pretty confident in saying that Derek Lewis is going to say, fuck this, I'm out of this, I don't need this anymore. And he'll likely, if Pavlovich doesn't force his hand, he'll give him something, or likely just kind of buckle. And I think, my prediction, I think, might have been Pavlovich by decision, but I've just convinced myself here on the spot that that's the likely outcome of this fight. Ari, I won't get you to go into great detail on this fight. I will on the next, but maybe just a couple of short thoughts about this heavyweight fight, please.
I don't think Derek Lewis is very good. And I think Pavlovich is far better. So I think that's how it's going to go. Really. I mean, Derek Lewis, we've seen him. He has the explosive get-ups, fine, whatever. But when you're fighting a guy that is 30, he is young, he is hungry, he is absolutely fucking jacked, right? Big old fella. He's not your podgy fucking Tanabosa type heavyweight. He's a well-muscled, lean, very, very strong, very athletic heavyweight. And I don't think that's the type of heavyweight you want to be fighting if you're Derek Lewis at 37, having had the title shots, having been to the apex, having made the money, having done the Instagram things and whatever. We know he doesn't look after himself outside of camp. We know he doesn't look after himself inside of camp. And I feel like this is the UFC. Obviously, Pavlovich missed the Tom Aspinall fight. He missed the Cyril Gagné fight. This is a way of the UFC being like, all right, let's fucking chuck this fella up the rankings a little bit. Derek Lewis will have a fun few fights before his contract runs out, and then we'll can him because he's on a fair whack of cheese, and we'll move on with the heavyweight division.
Indeed we will. Indeed we will. I'm going to stick with you, Harry. Talk to me about Alexander Pantoja versus Alex Perez, another flyweight battle. The guys are probably serving as backups to the co-main event as well in all reality. But it's a fascinating matchup between two guys that have been kind of mainstays in the top 10 in the flyweight division for quite some time now. It's going to be a real battle.
Absolutely it is. And the thing, look, Pantoja brings a smile to my face when I watch him, right? Like, I'm going to say this, and I'm glad Shawnee isn't here because he'd probably shred me for it, but it feels like Pantoja has watched a lot of Jose Aldo and been like, I'd like to be that guy. When he's able to do the striking and he's able to stand in that staunch stance and lean on the Muay Thai and crack those leg kicks in and look for his big, powerful shots, I think that's who he thinks he is in his head. He's not, obviously, because Jose's Jose, but he is gorgeous to watch, right? He's gorgeous to watch in the sense that he's able to be versatile. He went in against Brandon Royval and said, oh, you're a grappler, huh? That's fun. Watch this. And took him down in both rounds and got his back in both rounds and used some really beautiful jiu-jitsu in order to control Brandon Royval. He used the scoop grips. He used the Granbies and he used the crab rides to get to the back. He didn't allow Brandon Royval to invert under and grab the legs. He used lovely control points and talking legs and all of these sorts of things. He definitely knows his way around a turtle and back position in MMA. That's for damn sure. There is a weakness to his grappling, and I noticed that in the second round against Royval. Whilst the back take worked, and obviously got him the finish eventually, the way in which he took Royval's back, which was from a back body lock and basically just sat him into his hips, is not something that if you were teaching somebody how to fight and somebody how to take somebody down and get the back from a back body lock, you wouldn't say pull their hips onto your hips. Because if you're with somebody that's a superior athlete or they were able to change their footwork in the transition on the way down, they'd be able to turn in. And now you're on bottom with a dead body lock and a guy's probably landing shots in your face, right? But you then switch that up and you go and watch the Manel Kape fight. And what does he do? He can do the methodical striking. He can stand in front of you. He can out footwork you. He can out effective striking you. He can do all of the things as well. And that's why I think he's gorgeous to watch. The versatility, the ability to transition his game plan to whoever's in front of him. Now, who's in front of him is Alex Perez. Look, when you fight Deiveson Figueiredo, sometimes these things just happen, right? I can't really take too much away from Alex Perez for what happened against Figueiredo, right? The entry to the single leg was beautiful. Ducks under an overhand right, gets a high tight waist, gets the choose the elbow, and Davison's like, yeah. All right, watch this. And hits a scissor takedown. Who the fuck does a scissor takedown in MMA, lads? Deiveson Figueiredo does, right? Alexander Perez is like, look, my leg's fine, I'll be fine. Turns in and just gets guillotined. I mean, what are you going to do, right? What are you going to do? But the things that I took from that fight was he's much more staunch in his stance. He has concave shoulders. His hands are high. His chin's low. He fights like an athlete fights. He switches his stance athletically. He changes his angles athletically. He glides and floats around the cage. If you're talking from a philosophical point, if we're playing UFC 4 and we're playing Build a Fighter, and you have two philosophies of athlete, one is an athlete and one is a fighter. Pantoja is a fighter and Alex Perez is an athlete, right? We see him grapple in the open cage. We know the leg kicks against Formiga, but there's also weaknesses in the Formiga fight. We saw, and I mentioned it in the Kai Kara France bit. If you're going to throw leg kicks with the volume that he threw them at Formiga, you best be ready for the counter, because some of those leg kicks are going to be naked, and you do not want Pantoja landing that right hand as a counter to a naked leg kick. You don't want that. Brandon Royval didn't like it. Manel Kape didn't like it. And I can guarantee you that Alex Perez doesn't like it. Now, don't get me wrong. Perez has never been finished, never been knocked out to strikes. Joe B finished him with ground and pound, fine. But he's never been put out. Well, yeah, twice, but these things happen. It's Joe B. What are you going to do? He's never been put out. I don't know whether adopting a leg kick heavy approach is going to be where you want to be against Pantoja. I think he'll grapple. I think he will out-scramble you. Is it going to be an absolute all-out mad war? I think it might be. But the last note in my note here is this just has wildfire written all over it, I think. And I think that's what happens. But the one question I will have, and I promise I will stop laboring these points, is Alex Perez has been out the cage for a long old time, right? What was it, 5 fights or 6 fights he missed before this one? It's a bag of fights, right? A bag of fights before was that before the Figueiredo fight, or was that just before? Somebody tell me.
Figueiredo's his last fight.
Right.
November 2020.
Yeah.
Right. And then he's had fucking 6 missed fights.
Right.
Between missing weight and this and that and the next thing. That's a bag of time away from the cage. So we know that Pantoja has been dealing with some issues. We know that Perez has been sidelined for a while. Both of these boys are going to want to get in there. Alex Perez is going to want to say that I'm right up next to that title shot again. Pantoja is going to be like, well, actually, that title shot was fucking mine, lad, and I'm coming for it. I think this has wildfire written all over it.
It absolutely does, and it's going to be one of those fights that will be up there as fight of the night, or as in consideration as fight of the night, no matter how it goes down. Let's move on to the opening fight, and I'll go to you, Spencer, in the light heavyweight division. Things are hotting up at the light heavyweight division now. Obviously, Yuri Prochazka has just defeated Glover Teixeira. Phenomenal fight. The rumors is that rematch are going to go down. We have Jan Blachowicz waiting in the wings. We have Jamahal Hill versus Thiago Santos on tap. Ankalaev versus Smith. First thing I want to say about this fight is absolutely all the credit in the world to Anthony Smith to have gotten himself into this situation where, you know, with an impressive win over someone like Ankalaev can really put himself into the title mix again, especially after the beating he took from Glover Teixeira, which, you know, it probably was life altering to him, and he might not see the benefit or the non-benefits of a beating like that until later on in his career. But it's just a testament, let's do it again, to his mentality to get himself back in there and get himself in contention. But he has a tough test against Ankalaev here in the light heavyweight division.
Yeah, it's certainly a tough test. And as you said, props to Anthony Smith. He's done what he's needed to do. It's 3 straight first round stoppage wins coming into this, and it's been sort of that escalating level of competition, right? The way through. It's Devin Clark. Can't remember who the middle one was. Jimmy Crute, the dead leg fight, and then going blank here. Ryan Spann last time, where Ryan Spann carried him across the cage, and as he's doing it, you can see the look in Anthony Smith's face of, oh well, I'm going to make you pay for this bullshit. You think you're going to drag me over to your corner and I'm going to have to listen to Safe scream in my face to tell you what to do? I'm going to make you pay for this shit. And then he made him pay for this shit. This is a really interesting fight, and I got in shit when we were off air before we got started of saying that Magomed Ankalaev is similar to me to Islam Makhachev. What I mean to extend it is that he's not as talented. He's not as skilled. But he feels to me like a guy that is in a very similar position to where Makhachev was going into last year. That he's beaten all the guys he's supposed to beat, and now he's getting in there with yet another tough out. It's a 3rd straight former title challenger, and it's just another test. It's just another opportunity to see just how good this guy is. And I think this is a fight where he can get back to having those finishes and those impressive moments where the last 3 have been kind of a grind. He's done what he's needed to do. He's made the right reads. He's made the right decisions, fought very tactically to get those wins. Thiago Santos, Volkan Ozdemir, Nikita Krylov. I think this is one where Anthony Smith, 100%, he said it all week. I'm a guy that's going to come out there and I'm great at creating chaos. As Harry said off air when we were talking about this fight, in creating chaos, it invites chaos as well, and it leaves you open to some opportunities. And I think this is the one where if Ankalaev is as good as I think he is, and is as good as we all think he is, that he can have that performance here to open the main card, to open the pay-per-view that says, okay, boys, it's now 9 straight. It's now 3 straight former title challengers. How much, what else do I need to do before I get this opportunity? Maybe it's Jan next. Maybe it's the former champ and we do the rematch, fine. But there shouldn't be too much more for this dude if he goes out and beats Anthony Smith the way I think he could potentially on Saturday.
Yeah, it's really a really kind of crossroads for Ankalaev. You know, picking up some fantastic wins along the way. The last one drew a little bit of criticism against Thiago Santos. Wasn't as exciting as people would have hoped. A pretty lackluster main event. One that he won relatively easy, but kind of refused to take any chances in after getting hurt a little bit early along. And I think that that's going to be the precipice of this fight here too. Just play it safe a little bit early. Just figure out Anthony Smith a little bit and then try and implement his game plan. The 3 rounds, I think, will suit him better. It means that he'll be able to set a quicker pace than what we did see against Thiago Santos. You know, you're very high on Magomed Ankalaev, Harry. You have been for quite some time, and I think rightfully so as well. What do you see happening in this fight, and give us your assessment on how far he's away from a title shot and how far or how much of a ceiling he has? Do you think are we seeing improvement each time he steps in there?
Before I give my thoughts on that, can I actually ask you a question?
Go ahead.
So, do you think if you're Ankalaev and you know that the light heavyweight division isn't super deep, isn't super stacked, do you think that he has a necessity to go out and, let's take the Thiago Santos fight, do you think he needs to go out and blow Thiago Santos out the water? Or do you think him just going in and winning, which is what he did very handily, right? Do you think going in and winning is enough?
Well, I think if he had a conversation with Leon Edwards, he would say going out there and win decisions is you're probably looking at yourself taking the long route to the title, rather than if he goes in there against Thiago Santos, blows Thiago Santos out of the water. Or let's talk about Anthony Smith. He goes in there and puts Anthony Smith out in round 1 or round 2, devastating fashion, and gets onto that microphone and shouts, "Give me my title shot. I am the best in this division and I deserve my shot." You know what I mean? And you need to take a little bit of a chance to do that. Yes. Okay. Drawing chaos creates chaos. Spencer said it and you said it perfectly right. But sometimes you got to fucking do that, because you know what? Even if he does go out there and it doesn't go his way and he takes a chance and he does get caught, you know what? He has plenty of time to come back again. Only 1 defeat, relatively young in his career, and he has the chance to go in there. So I think it all boils down to circumstances. And I think the circumstance for him in this fight is to go out there and make a statement, because there's guys ahead of him as well. And because that's what Jamal Hill is going to try and do against Thiago Santos. He's going to fucking go in there and try to get Thiago Santos out of there. So you've got to be thinking like that. You've got to go in there with a kill or be killed mentality at times. There are times where you have to play it safe. Mark Giacchesi, we spoke about it on the live stream. He was fucking 4 fights or 3 fights losing in a row. He had to fight safely. Ankalaev, for me, if his quickest route to the title is getting up there, taking chances and putting guys away.
All right, then. So let me tell you what I think is going to happen in this fight. I think Anthony Smith gets hit too much. I think for a guy that is very tall and has great range in him, he doesn't use it. He sits really low in his stance. He's happy to pour out jabs and land 1-2s. He has a nice jab, right? Does have a nice jab, but he gets countered a lot. He leaves his jab out there. He has a look at it after he's thrown it. When he throws that jab, he likes to keep the arm out there as like a jousting post to then angle off, but then he gets leg kicked and body punched and, all the things. He said something which I hope is just shit talking in his pre-fight. And he says, Ankalaev's not that dangerous. He doesn't really do anything. Now, it means he doesn't make any mistakes, but he also doesn't do much. He's on the desk as an analyst for the UFC, right? If that's your read, stop going on the desk. Because yes, Ankalaev has a very rudimentary basic game. He stands in the very, very standard L-shaped stance you'd expect. His body is straight up. His hands are close, and he throws straight shots. He throws teeps. He throws things that are basic, quote unquote. But he also puts dudes away when he steps on the gas tank, right? He also can find your chin. He can also grapple his arse off. Now, any mention of his name next to Islam Makhachev is absolute fucking heresy, lads. Get that shit out of here. However, I think in this one, especially for Anthony Smith, and let's look at the Ryan Spann fight. Ryan Spann is no dominant grappler, but when Anthony Smith was trying to finish him in the first round, he gave up top position multiple times, and then in his ability, in his way of getting back up, he just grabs an arm and stands up. You do that against Magomed Ankalaev, and you're going to find the other hand wrapped around your chin really, really quickly. I think the self-assessment that Anthony Smith gave of I do really well to create chaos is actually very perfect. He does do a great job of creating chaos because he leaves his chin out there and offers the fans some of his teeth at the end of a round against Glover Teixeira. But if you offer those teeth to Magomed Ankalaev, he'll happily smash them down your throat. And I feel like if there's a fight that the UFC are making for Magomed Ankalaev to find a finish, Anthony Smith is going to give you a fight that is going to allow you to find a finish should you want one. Now, the only test I see Smith giving Ankalaev is he is a tough cunt. He is going to bring it to you. He is going to try and jab your face off. If we find ourselves on the mat, he is going to try and scramble. He's not just going to accept bottom position. He's not going to accept any position that he's not comfortable with. So he's going to make Ankalaev work for the finish. But in the same dichotomy that I've just said, he's going to make you work for the finish while simultaneously asking you if you want one. And if I'm Ankalaev, just put his teeth in his throat and move on.
It's literally his fake teeth maybe after the Glover Teixeira fight, but it will be interesting. It's a good fight to kick us off for the main card, guys, in the light heavyweight division title implications for me anyway, depending on the result. Taking a look at the prelim card, we're going to breeze through it relatively quickly. A shout out to Drakkar Klose, who I was lucky enough to get an interview with. And, you know, he seems in good spirits after coming back from that long layoff from the Jeremy Stevens push. You know, came in, got a great win in his last fight. And, you know, he's going in there against Rafa Garcia. And yeah, he's just looking to go in there and fight. I spoke to him at the time. He hadn't a fight scheduled at that stage, but he said, and he knew, and he was confident at that time, said, I'm fighting on that card. So I'm glad he got matched up. A winnable fight against Rafa Garcia, in my opinion. You know, we're talking about Drakkar Klose, who ran Beneil Dariush pretty close in that fight at times, you know, and he came close on occasion, and it didn't work out for him there. So we saw what Beneil Dariush did, and I thought it was unfortunate timing for him with that injury over Jeremy Stevens, and he's looking at this as a real second opportunity for him to kind of propel himself, and I think he's good enough to propel himself into the top 10 of that division and to cause a few problems there. Just wanted to highlight that fight. Spencer, I will go to you last time. I'll just maybe eke if there was one or two fights, and I'll let you round us off. Harry, is there anything, look at raise the alarm bells? Drew Dober is fighting. I don't care if he was fighting himself in the mirror. That is going to be an exciting fight. He went in there and produced a stunning display against Terence McKinney in his last outing, a fight that he was on multiple times under pressure but pulled it out. That's a fight that's is always going to be exciting. He takes on Rafael Alves. Is there maybe that fight or any other fights that you're looking forward to on the prelims?
Yeah, it was just that. Just give me all of that. Just give me that times 5. If whatever happens, just do it again. Get him patched up, introduce him again, get Bruce in there, and let's just see it again. Whatever it is, let's just fucking see it again. Like, Drew Dober's put himself in a position now where in the UFC, if Drew Dober fights and you know who he is, you want to watch that fight, right? Okay, you go in and Islam Makhachev does Islam Makhachev things. What are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do? You're going to ask him not to? Like, okay, cool. But other than that, man, he just gets in there and he just scraps, right? Like, he doesn't take a back step. That Terrence McKinney is probably going to go down as round of the year, if not a high contender for round of the year. And Rafael Alves, in his last fight against Mark Giacchese, was like, I don't get paid by the hour, lads. I'm getting in here and I'm getting the fuck out. So we're probably in for another war. Give me all of that.
Indeed, give us all of that. And someone that I'd like to mention, Spencer, before I hand it over to you, is Michael Morales, a guy who you've shunned the spotlight on this week. Someone that you are looking forward to seeing in there. He takes on Adam Fugget in the 175 or 170 pound division, the welterweight division, as others would call it. I know you're looking forward to seeing him. What other fights? Just give us maybe your opinions on him first, and share what other fights you're also looking forward to on the prelim section.
I mean, Morales is just one of those kids that coming off of the Contender Series last year, I really wanted to take my time with some of them. Excuse me. There were a couple that really looked like potential guys that could pop, right? Jack Della Maddalena, who we'd seen have some success. You knew Chidi Njokuani was going to be able to come in because he's an older, experienced guy. He's had some success. And Morales was the young kid that really stood out for me because of the frame, because of the size. I don't know what it necessarily means to be a 3-time national champion wrestler in Ecuador. I don't know how that measures out, but I know that he's 6 feet tall. He's 24 years old. He's got an 80-inch reach, and he's growing into his frame. And in his debut, he went through some adversity. He got punched in the mouth and knocked down right out of the chute against Trevin Giles, who has knocked out people at light heavyweight in the UFC, has a win over Ryan Spann, has won fights, knocked out people at middleweight. And this kid just picked himself up, and Trevin Giles put him on the ground and put him in a head and arm choke. And he was like, all right, cool. I'll just deal with this. Watch this. I'm 23 and I'm athletic, and just bridged out of it, rolled into top position, was like, cool. I don't want to be here. Stood up, got out, and then put this dude out. And you can do that in your first fight in the UFC, and you show no real nerves and you deal with a little adversity. Now, I don't think Trevin Giles is the greatest welterweight that's ever been, but he's got some wins. It's a tough fight for your debut, and the kid passed with flying colors. So let me see it again. Would have preferred if it was the original matchup. Ramiz Brahimaj would have been a different kind of challenge for him, a great grappler. But it is what it is. We get to see him nonetheless. The other one for me is the last prelim. Alex Moreno, Matt Semmelsberger. Give me all of that fight, because Semi is a guy that he'll put you out in 15 seconds if you're not careful. But he's also somebody that I think has that potential, and I want to see it. And this fight to me is going to help clarify that opinion for me. He's a former collegiate football player, so good athlete. He is what we would call a plus athlete. We've seen the power. We saw earlier this year that he can go 15 minutes and wrestle a little bit, and he's picking up some of the other elements and putting everything together. He's bolting on the elements, as Harry would say. So can he go out there against a veteran guy in Alex Moreno that's been around for a while? We know where he fits, sort of in that second 15 in the welterweight division. Can he go out there and get this win? Because you go and beat Alex Moreno, we know what that means. We know where it puts you. And suddenly you're starting to look like somebody that I want to pay a little more attention to and see what the next step of the development is. Those are the ones for me that really stand out.
Indeed, and we will have an avalanche of action throughout the UFC 277 card. Amanda Nunes versus Julianna Peña, Brandon Moreno versus Kai Kara France, the two main ones on the main card. Lots of questions to be answered. Is it the Julianna Peña era? Can Amanda Nunes get her crown back? That's the two biggest questions stemming off this card. It's been a pleasure talking about it with you guys and with Sean. Thanks to you as always. And thanks to our sponsors, All Real Nutrition Bars. Head on over to eatallreal.com. Enter the code word SevereMMA. Hit up Sean Sheehan on the DMs. I'm not sure how many of those t-shirts are left, but there might be a couple left if you're lucky. They are the shit, and you need to be wearing one. Head over to the SevereMMA Patreon account. Sign up there. Listen to Harry's one-man booth there, which is also for free. Hit up the Keyboard Kimura for Spencer Kite as well. Listen to the guys next day takeaways on Sunday. Listen to the main Severe MMA podcast for all the action and reaction to the UFC 277 card. Check out the L Triangle. Check me out at O'Neill MMA on Twitter, at Spencer Kite on Twitter, and at BJJ_Harry Powell on Twitter. That's a wrap. We'll be back next week to